It's
Okay,
live
take your time,
now.
Dan. Take your time.
So just give me a second and I will...
Take your time. Take your time.
Hello, Lenny.
Hello.
Hello.
Yes, are you ready?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Okay, one moment. Of course, we're going to move on time right now. Let me see if I can I'll play that shortly. Let me see if I can just bring that down again. Joining us on the line live here, I've got to say, Dr. Seshni. Good evening, Doctor. How are you doing?
Good evening, Lenny. I'm great, thank you. How are you?
Well, it's been a fabulous day for me, so I'm feeling rather robust and fantastic. But of course, it's 20 minutes past the hour 9, so soon bedtime and back to work.
I know the feeling. Same here.
But it's over. It's all finished. But it was kind of miserable though, compared to the weekend when we had a glow of sunshine. And I'm thinking, this is it. That spring is in the air.
Exactly.
Ready to do the gardening now, but suddenly it's raining all day, but nevertheless. So are you in good spirit? Are you well?
Yes, I'm well. I'm always well and always try to keep in good spirits. But I guess, mental health is so important for every person. And I think I was enjoying listening to your show talking about cervical cancer. And I mean, the psychological impact is huge. So I think it's so good that you've got me on today to talk about it. And I just want to share some, knowledge about the psychological impact of cervical cancer. So thank you for having me on to share some of this information and to help those that are listening.
Thank you, Doctor. Go ahead, please. Go ahead.
Yes. So, I mean, in terms of cervical cancer, as we know, any person that's diagnosed with cancer, it becomes like a shock to their system, and it will take time processing that information and the diagnosis. So initially, like all people who are diagnosed with any type of cancer, person will experience some sort of shock, disbelief, and also some sort of emotional difficulties. So some dysphoria, anxiety, fear, and if left untreated, it can eventually become sort of diagnosed as mental illnesses or like depression. So it can become quite serious. So I think it's important to recognize exactly how you feel when you're first diagnosed with any type of cancer, and specifically if we're talking about cervical cancer, which affects women.
This particular cancer, obviously, that affects the women. We just listened to a little clip. I mean, the symptoms themselves initially they can cause what reading here from the NHS, side effects, and further can develop into cervical cancer. That includes bleeding, abnormal discharge, and pelvic pain, and discomforts, really. You talked about the psychological effect. When one goes through these particular, feelings and the symptoms, psychologically, are they at ease? And if so, what sort of help or sort of empathy can they get from somebody who hasn't experienced that magnitude of pain?
Yes, the way you explain the symptoms is exactly what they would experience. So, I mean, I'm obviously a psychiatrist, but in terms of knowing about the symptoms, as you've just said, just a disclaimer that any information that's given, do consult your GP or a doctor or mental health professional. So whatever we're discussing is just information and some advice. Yes, so in terms of the symptoms, as you said, they will experience some pain in the lower region, in their genital region, and they can experience some bleeding, especially bleeding during their periods. During sexual intercourse, they can also experience some pain and bleeding. and discomfort, and some heavy discharge, which obviously includes some bleeding and bloody discharge. So I think these are when a woman will start to maybe notice that there could be something wrong. So when they experience pain to such a severity, I think the psychological impact already starts even before the diagnosis is made. So I think it was good that you've actually asked that question. Not being a medic yourself, you seem to have a lot of knowledge, and
we wanted to bring it on a lighter note because obviously there may be somebody listening in perhaps, early relationship, perhaps in a relationship where perhaps the partner does not have that kind of empathy or understanding when the woman is going through these particular pain. But what I wanted you to draw is the idea of how one can get comfort, especially when men may not understand, but the comfort that a woman must need and the support is what I would like you to bring forth so that we can understand from a psychological perspective.
Oh, I'm just loving your questions because it sounds like you've just researched it and you're saying all the right words. And you're highlighting the importance of acknowledging the psychological impact of cervical cancer or possible cervical cancer, not just to the woman, but also to her partner, someone that she's in a relationship with. And I think the key words, you already said it, you seem like you were more prepared than I am. But so in terms of, the key words was empathy.
Surrounded by women in the house, sometimes I just have to listen to my mom's, hey, listen, this is women's business, get out, so I'm trying to learn as well,
Well, I think a lot of men, Lenny, I'm not just saying it because you're interviewing me live on air, but I do think that you definitely set an example of how some men should have some more understanding, love and respect for women. But the key word you said was empathy. So I'm all for empathy, and especially as a psychiatrist, empathy is basically what we say. Empathy is actually putting yourself in that person's shoes and feeling exactly what they're feeling. So it's not sympathy where you're sympathizing with someone, but you're showing empathy and you're trying to understand what that person is going through. So I think this is what the other halves or the partners or fiancés or spouses or the men in their lives need to display. So they need to show some more understanding and empathy and compassion and love and kindness, because it is a difficult thing to go through. Any woman that's diagnosed with cervical cancer, she's not just dealing with the diagnosis, she's dealing with the emotional difficulties, the social difficulties, the difficulties with treatment. She would have to go through a series of assessments and treatments to establish which phase of or stage of the cervical cancer, whether it's stage 0 to 4, and according to that, she would then be given treatment like radiotherapy, surgery, or chemotherapy, which in itself has side effects and effects. So, there's a lot for women to deal with, and I think therefore having a partner who's very understanding, showing empathy and love and compassion and kindness and help and support is so important. So I think that those were key things which I just picked up from the question that you asked. So I think that's a first step. So we're just talking about the relationships, and we haven't even spoken about the intimacy aspect of the relationship, which obviously is something that a woman and her partner will need to deal with, especially at a time when she is given a diagnosis like that.
Sure. If I can just maybe ask you kindly, I'm just looking about my time is short. If you could perhaps, as I say, from your experience in the kind of work that you deal with the patients and the psychologists, psychiatrists, such young people or women of today's generation, what would be the words of comfort that you can give to our listeners, somebody who's listening possibly now, in order to endure and to be strong and not to feel, very, very, scared to express it. Somebody could be very shy and embarrassed about it.
Yeah, so that's key. Exactly what you're saying. Lenny. So, in terms of the diagnosis, I think when any woman's given the diagnosis, it can be very difficult initially. It can be a shock. And in a sense, it can be like grief and a loss. Because it's to do with her internal organs and very intimate part of her body. So, and it obviously represents a lot of other things. That means that she might need to undergo treatment. She wouldn't be certain about the stage of cancer she is at and what could be the outcome or the prognosis of her stage. There would also be the concern about fertility and whether she'd be able to have any children. And there would also be the other issue about intimacy and intercourse with her partner. So there's so many different things that a woman would be going through. And I think it's a lot like grief, as I said. So my advice would, we spoke about grief last week, and coincidentally this is similar. So you would need to go through those stages. So the initial would be denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and then acceptance, where the woman will then start to experience that peace and accepting of her diagnosis. So I think allow yourself to go through the different stages, get support, speak to someone. I think don't suffer alone. That would be one key tip is, for anything like this. And I think for any mental health or any sort of type of cancers or any illness, people need not suffer alone. So speak to someone, get some support, whether it's online support. I've got a list of organizations that I will talk about just now before we finish, but speak to someone. So whether it's so in oncology, specifically with cancers and cervical cancer, they will have oncology social workers and counselors, and they do advise. So all the treatments that we advise, like medication, if you need medication for depression or for anxiety symptoms, if you feel that your mood is not lifting and you need some medication, they would advise you seeing a mental health professional, so a psychiatrist, your GP, or someone in the oncology department that can deal with this and refer you appropriately. So it's a holistic treatment of medication, psychological support of CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, mindfulness, and then the social aspects of support. And they also advise, eating healthily, taking care of yourself, taking enough rest.
What I'm going to do now, Doc, is we just hold it there. We're going to take a little break. We'll be back and we can conclude this. Is that okay with you?
Yes, sure, that's fine. Thank you.
Hold on. Yeah, sorry, my advert has just come in, just cut my advert already. Sorry, my darling. But it's great. Thank you so much. The response is good.
No, that's fantastic.
People are responding to that. So after this ad break, okay, I'm going to play a little clip on the television, because this was, I think, on GMTV, where the NHS were talking, the lady was interviewing women. It's about 3 minutes long. Try to listen to it, and then afterwards we can conclude in how you think we should be, responding to this and supporting our women, our daughters dearly regarding this particular cervical cancer. Yeah? Fantastic. Is that okay?
Yes, it's fantastic. Thank you.
Okay, my dear. So just bear with me a second. The ad is going to come on. I'm going to keep quiet for a while, and then I'm going to play the little 3-minute NHS one, and then we can conclude. Yeah?
Brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you. Just one moment.
Almost 2 decades experience, no job is too small. We cover Luton, Bedfordshire, Hertfordshire and London. So whether you're interested in our landlord specials, refurbishing your home, or just starting out for the first time, we can help with our specialised online and in-home services. We offer you free measuring and estimates whilst working to your individual budget and needs. So make E&A Flooring your first choice for floor coverings. From carpets, laminate flooring, engineered wood, luxury vinyl, tiles, and bespoke rugs, stair runners and other high-end floor coverings. E&H Flooring for all your flooring needs, from our door to your floor. Satisfaction guaranteed. It's more than a tagline, it's a promise. For more information, give us a call on 0203 673 591 or 07947 133 021. Alternatively, visit us at www.exflooring.co.uk. Do you require decking in your back garden? Does your existing decking, garden slabs, or patio require cleaning?
are you able to listen to it on the phone at home, or are you got it listening in the background, or are you gonna be okay?
If I'm listening in the background.
Oh, if you listen, that's good. So it's gonna be 3 minutes. So I'm gonna unplug you here, and don't hang up. Just stay, keep your phone on, and then when I finish playing the 3 minutes, and I'll come to you. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay, 1 moment.
Check me out on Facebook or Instagram. Just type in JJ Song and you can find me.
Welcome back. I've got to say thank you very much for joining us right here. I've got to say good evening to you if you just logged in. Good evening goes out to Kathy. Good evening goes out to Aisha as well, logged in. Of course, big shout goes out to let me see. I'm getting ready to just try to. Big shout goes out to Frank as well, logged in. And I've got to say, earlier on we were talking to the big man himself, the author, Mr. Lyndon Wizard. Now, for those of you texting messages, you want to find out his website, yes, you can. Log on to the www.theinspireddiabetic.com. www.theinspireddiabetic.com. You can at L-Wizard, WISSART. Just finding more information on the Facebook. Once again, Mr. Lyndon Wizard. Great man indeed. Of course, the chef with the recipe to cure type 2 diabetes. Definitely no sugar coating, as they say.
Listen Urban Radio.
Right, currently now we've been talking to a topic that's been a hot topic during this particular month. And I've got to say, I've got Dr. Seshni Modlia on the other side. But before we talk to her, it's been, talking about cervical cancer, the symptoms, treatments, and causes. And of course, I'm going to play a little clip here of an interview from the NHS right here, Dr. Zoe Williams. Take a listen.
Cancer is also one of the most preventable cancers, and cervical screening can help stop it before it starts. Earlier, I had some life-saving conversations with some incredible women around why it's so important to attend your screening when invited. Hello, Dr. Zoe, how are you? I'm very well, thank you. So, I believe you have a question for me. What I've been hearing is that the test itself has potentially changed now, and it's now testing for the HPV virus. Right, you're right. HPV is human papillomavirus, and this is a really common virus, and usually it just goes away on its own. Your cervical screening sample is first tested for HPV, and that's a more accurate and more sensitive way than the previous way, and it lets us know who is at higher risk of having abnormal cervical cells that can potentially progress to cancer further down the line. The important thing to remember is that having HPV does not mean that you have cervical cancer. How long does it take to cervical screening, and what does it entail? The actual test only takes 2 to 3 minutes. When you go into the appointment, the nurse or the doctor that is seeing you should explain what's going to happen. And then they're going to ask you to undress from the bottom down and lie on the couch. And that's when they give you a paper sheet as well that you can pop over yourself. They'll use a speculum and a soft brush to just brush a few cells off the cervix, and that's what's sent off as a sample. We have different techniques to make you feel more comfortable, so whether it's breathing exercises to really help you relax, and if you'd rather listen to music, heavy metal, whatever works. Remember, cervical screening is available to women and people with a cervix aged between 25 and 64 years. If everyone attended screening regularly, 83% of cervical cancers could be prevented.
If you have had your HPV vaccine, do you still need to attend your screening?
Because it doesn't protect against all of the types of HPV that can cause cervical cancer, it's really important that once women reach the age of 25, they attend their cervical screening appointments. So you both had cervical screening in the past, Louise probably many, and Sharon, you're 26, so you have also had one. What have your experiences been? Like, you're always a bit scared because you hear like misconceptions about things from other people, and you're always worried, I think, one, it's embarrassing, whether it's going to hurt or not. I would say best thing you can do if you're feeling embarrassed, if you're feeling afraid, always to share that with the person, whether it's a nurse or a doctor. So the thing to remember is you are in control. I think it's really helpful. Next time it arrives, I'll think it's going to be all right, and I always go anyway. But it's with a sense of trepidation. And tell your nurse or doctor, that you have these things. Like, ask them to have a look at the brush. I'm going to look at the brush. I think they're going to look at the brush. All of us see the brush. Yeah, I definitely want to see the brush. All of that is fine. We can show you the brush. If it makes it more comfortable for you at the end of the day. Remember, cervical screening saves lives, so don't ignore your screening advice. And if you missed your last one, book an appointment with your GP practice or your local sexual health clinic. For further information, visit nhs.uk/cervical screening. Luton Urban Radio.
Just joined in, of course, just played a little clip there. Of course, Dr. Zoe Williams. We've still got live on the phone on the other side, Dr. Seshni Modbia. Now, let me just read you one or two facts. Doctor, can you hear us clear right now?
Yes, I can.
I just, whilst we're going through this, one or two little, my daughter Lauren just gave me a hand at this and how we was trying to put this problem together. And she said that the best way what is the best way to prevent cervical cancer? And she came up with this particular notes, obviously, through the NHS screen. The best way is by attending cervical screening, previously known as a smear test. The NHS cervical screening program invites women from the age of 25 to 64 to attend. Women aged 25 to 49 are offered a screening every 3 years. And those aged 50 to 64 are offered screening every 5 years. Now, if we can summarize, Doctor, I mean, of course, these are topics that we don't talk often about them, especially maybe on the shows or on the radio, but at home, we're now beginning to build this, last couple of years, understanding of one another. And before they could be taboo, in your experience and in what we've just learned, the message itself is pivotal, isn't it? That women have and must attend cervical screening.
Yes, prevention is better than cure. And listening to Dr. Zoe Williams and your daughter's notes, it's clear that the message is you do need to attend cervical screening. So because human papillomavirus, as Dr. Zoe Williams was talking about, could be a cause of cervical cancer as well as age, also STDs and unprotected sex and getting STDs. So there's a large number of other causes that can result in cervical cancer. So I think that's why going for a cervical smear and cervical screening, as the GPs have advised, most women will at a certain age bracket will get a letter, a reminder saying that you need to go and have your cervical smear. And I think Dr. Zoe Williams went through the whole process quite nicely, explaining that you can actually be quite relaxed and not anxious about it and fearful, which a lot of women do find, and that's why they don't go for the smear test. But I think the advice is very clear, Lenny, that you do need to go for cervical screening. The earlier you go, the better it is, and and even for cervical cancer, the oncologist and the specialist will advise you, the gynecologist will advise you that the earlier that you get detected or diagnosed with the cervical cancer, the better the prognosis, the better, the possibility of you getting treatment in terms of surgery, chemo, or radiotherapy, according to what the specialist decides. And also then the easier it will be for you and the psychological impact will be less, because we were talking about the psychological impact, and it can be quite stressful. It can be a huge life-changing event, an adjustment, and also it can affect you that you would end up having mental disorders like depression and other mood symptoms. So, and they say at least 33 to 52% of people that are diagnosed with cervical cancer do end up with mental health problems. So it's really important that the person gets support, not just for themselves, but also support from their loved ones. They do speak to trained professionals in the oncology service. As I said, there will be a counselor, there will be a social worker, oncologist, social worker, and we do advise the treatment, exactly how we would treat a depression with a holistic approach with medication like antidepressants, for depression or anxiety, psychological treatments like CBT and mindfulness, and social aspects of care and support is important. And taking care of yourself, making sure you're eating healthily, you're getting help and support, you're sleeping, and you exercising regularly, getting enough sunshine and walks, and drinking plenty of water, and just taking care of your health and your mental health and well-being. So I think it's so important. We touched a bit on how partners can support. So there's a lot that partners can support, apart from lending an ear to just, for their partner to listen to them, but also be there to support them with, showing empathy, love, compassion, kindness, showing them that they're there for them no matter what the outcome's going to be. Having that support will reduce the stress and the mental effects and the psychological impact. Because any person going through this, you can imagine how stressed and upsetting and they might be feeling. And I just want to say, so the other things partners can do is obviously accompany them for appointments, offer them a lift or a ride, support them, at home, helping out with chores, with meals, just helping them day to day, because sometimes some people might not be able to work as well. And also in terms of intimacy, and there's other ways they can maybe show intimacy, and just be understanding that the person's going through something like this. And the cervical cancer, obviously prognosis will depend on which stage 0 to 4, but the earlier it's detected, the earlier it's treated, the better the outcome would be, and the person can go in remission and can get back to sort of normal life. So it's not to say that if they get the diagnosis that that's it and that's the end of them. But so I think there is hope, especially if you get the right treatment and support, not just from oncology services, but from the GP, from mental health. So it should be, multi-agency support. There's a lot of online resources as well, Lenny. So I'm just coming to the end. So as you know, with mental health, there's psychological treatment. So the IAPT services, which is the intense access to psychological therapies, where if someone feels they want to go for counseling or psychological therapy, they can, go to their GP and ask them to be referred in the IAPT services. They can also look at Mind, Samaritans. So these are all organizations that can help them as well with mental health issues. And also, we know that Macmillan services offer a range of support, and any hospice as well, like Willen Hospice. So they also offer advice and support. And, any person that's going through it, just, they just need to believe that they will get the right treatment and support and help, and that hopefully that they can recover from it. But obviously it will depend from person to person, and I'm sure it's for some people listening it might be quite difficult and challenging. My advice would be, do get someone to talk to and share your difficulties and your fears and your anxieties with. And I'm sure that if you have a range of options of ways in which you can coping strategies are really important, and a support system. So I think those would be the two main key things.
Absolutely.
Listen, Urban Radio, the pound.
Reading that text message coming up from Joanne in the Wembley area. Thank you very much, Joanne. She says, loving the show. My partner now listening to the show, and how wonderful to hear talking about support. And she's put XXX. Hey, Joanne, you haven't told us your partners, but I'm sure he's listening and he's supporting you. Thank you very much for the message. Well, Doctor, it's always great talking to you, and I can't wait to have you back in the studio live. And you always step up every time we ask for you to give us a little bit of feedback.
No, you're welcome. You're welcome. And I think I just want to say, on the support side, a lot of people don't want to ask for help. People want to isolate themselves, and there's stigma around having cervical cancer or other type of cancers, and like breast cancer, or other cancers. So I think people need to realize that we in the times that we're living, that it's okay not to be okay, and you can ask for help. So, and I think how many people will turn you down when you do ask for help, Lenny? So, most people, to be honest, I work in a field where if someone asks for help, we are there to support, and if we can't do it, we will refer to someone that can. So it's just about picking up the phone, sending a text message, or just calling up the GP practice or mental health crisis centers, or crisis team numbers. Someone will be at the end of that phone to be able to listen to you and help you and support you. So don't think that you need to go through any of this alone. Together, people can overcome a lot of things, and we've had a lot of success stories. So we spoke about treatment and everything, but in terms of success stories, people do recover. Some people do recover. Some people go back to leading as a normal life as possible, and then the psychological impacts obviously are reduced, and they're a lot happier when things are a lot better, and when they're in a better health as well. So don't think that if you're going through it now, you've just been given the diagnosis, that's the end. There is light at the end of the tunnel. So stay strong and do get help and support, and all the best. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Seshni. Thank you so much for your time and your words and your accompanying it. Greetings to you and your family. Have a nice evening. We'll speak in shows to come. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Lenny. Thanks for having me, and thanks to your daughter for all her research. She made you sound like a very, very knowledgeable. You are knowledgeable, but you sounded more like a doctor.
That you get on, thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Well, as I say, that's the doctor there, of course, and it's always great having a side, of course, from the psychiatrist and psychology field as well. I want to say thank you for the text message coming through and saying we should always, let me read. Thank you for bringing this show to the forum. We need more shows like this. Thank you very much, 642. We will endeavor. But let's just conclude by playing one or two little clips of some of the experiences some of these women have received or what they're going through right now.
I have a little nervous, to be honest.
Thanks, Lenny.
But I'm really happy.